And I started to pray blessing over people and releasing those things, releasing people, releasing the pain, releasing the hurts. And I started releasing those things. And now that I'm really kind of putting my timeline together in my heart, I think that was the beginning of some of the things, the miracles that God started to do on the other side of obedience.
Welcome to the Everyday Faith Podcast, where we believe you can live out your faith every day by starting with belief, embracing your mission, committing to obedience, and pursuing community. I'm Jess.
And I'm Dan. And today we're back with John Velsor for part 2 of our conversation. You'll recall that John is a father and husband. He's a pastor and leadership coach, passionate about igniting transformation among leaders, organizations, families, and marriages. Last time, John shared some great insights and hilarious stories. Today, we're diving even deeper into the pillars of belief and obedience, and of course, with plenty of fun along the way. So, John, welcome back.
Come on. I'm excited to be here again. Thank you guys for allowing me the opportunity.
Well, last time we talked about some really good stuff. One of them was what it means to live the cruciform life. Could you just give even like a 10-second recap of what is the cruciform life? What does that mean?
Yeah, cruciform life is where our life is shaped by the cross. And Jesus on the cross, his hands were lifted toward God in surrender, but his arms were open in a sacrificial love for others. And it's learning how to live that sacrificial love, that obedience, that humility, that selfless act that Jesus represented and reflected on the cross.
Yeah, I love that. Shaped by the cross. We talked about going through hard things and how that really is honestly kind of the opportunity to walk it out, right?
Yeah.
When we go through hard things. Now, my understanding is belief, obedience, living the cruciform life, all these things have really come together for you, maybe your family as well, recently, walking through some hard stuff. Can you share a bit about that?
Yeah.
Let's go there.
Yeah. I think I learned about the cruciform life in a really tough way. Most people are like, I've never heard of that, and I don't know about that. And it's, if you think about what Jesus endured on the cross, so Jesus endured the cross, the pain, the suffering, the humiliation. But on the other side of that, or the other side of his obedience was the greatest miracle that we've ever seen, which was the power of the resurrection. And I learned that probably laying on the floor of a hotel room, experiencing my first massive panic attack. Never had one before, didn't know what it was. I thought I was dying. And I just had this moment where like, God, what is going on? I was torn between calling 911 or calling my wife and trying to figure things out. And it was just a massive panic attack. I ended up calling one of the overseers here for our church, but also an accountability partner and a dear friend of my life. And for the next hour and a half, he walked me through what I was experiencing and then prayed. A great story, because one of the pillars is to pursue community. But community is not going to pursue you. Like, you have to pursue the right community. And I'm thankful that I chose to pursue the right community, because my friend Ricky was out in a soccer field coaching his kids' soccer game, not a practice. And I accidentally answered his phone on his watch and was like, John, are you there? I'm like, I can't breathe. And he ended up having the assistant coach step in. He went to the car and for the next hour and a half walked me through to a place from anxiety and panic to a place of peace. And I would say what we were walking through in that moment is what St. John of the Cross talks about. St. John of the Cross from the 16th century, and he talks about the dark night of the soul. It's this painful period of suffering, but it's also a place where God does some deep work in you. And on the other side of that dark night, you don't just survive, but you come out stronger, you come out better, you come out mature in your walk with the Lord. And I would say that what we were walking through goes beyond just a demonic oppression. It moved into what I would say is a satanic attack on my life, our calling, our family, our finances, our church.
Wow.
Even went so far as like to my kids. My kids started to experience some of this. My wife, and it came through the doorway of betrayal from people who were close to us. And psychologists say that the betrayal is the deepest wound that a person will ever go through. And it's because betrayal isn't just painful. What I've learned was in that hotel room, betrayal was disorienting. It throws you off, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically. It messes with your heart. It messes with your mind. It messes with trust. It changes. It disorients your plans, your ability to see what's next. And that's hard when you're a leader and you're a parent and you're a husband and you're a pastor and you're having this moment and you're like, what's going on? And so for me, there were moments when we were walking through that, what we call the dark night of the soul. It felt like everything was unraveling. And like I said, that pressure was so great that it literally dropped me to the floor of a hotel room, having a full blown panic attack. And I mean, I remember my kids were constantly asking in that season, like, why, what's going on? Why would people say this, do this? My wife cried, I would say probably every day for a year. She would cry herself to sleep and she would get up in the morning and she would cry. And I'm telling you, what we were walking through wasn't something that you could just fix with like a one conversation or a quick prayer.
Yeah.
It's the dark night of the soul. It's where you're on the other side of that cruciform life, and it's painful and it's hard. And I'll never forget my friend Ricky was like, man, can you imagine after all the hell that you're walking through, can you imagine what's on the other side? And I remember holding my chest going, no, I can't. And so that's kind of a little bit, where we're at, where, we're on the back end of that, where we've kind of come through that. But the cruciform life means that you're shaped by the cross and you've got to endure some of those things. And there's some things I think when you're walking through it, what I had to learn how to do within this idea of the cruciform life is I had to learn there were some things inside of me that needed to die in order for there to be that resurrection.
Wow.
And so I had to lay down some things. I had to lay down my need for control. I had to lay down my need to be needed, my need to be understood. I had to learn to lay down.
Well, can you share? I mean, is there stories or some ideas around some of those? Your need to be needed, or your need for control. These are. I know you're like talking about some of these. I'm like, oof, those are good deep things we're talking about here.
Yeah. As a leader, you're always thinking like, how do I control the situation? How do I control the narrative? How do we work through this? What can we do to fix it? I'm a fixer. If there's a problem, like how do we fix it? And
he's
like
actually a very good problem solver, by the way.
Yeah,
you're very good at fixing things.
Oh, I love doing that. Like, hey, let's think through it.
You have like no idea about what you're talking about, and then you still fix it. It's very impressive.
We work through that together. It's the pursuit community. You got to get the right community around you. I would say for that, it's learning to let go of that control. I think was probably my hardest part because I would love to step in. I would love when we walked through what we walked through, there was no closure. But yet then there were still things that were being done and things that were being said that if I stepped into it, it would have been probably a little disrespectful or cross some boundaries. And so I had to stay in where I was. And I remember the Lord just spoke to my heart and said, hey, John, if you'll handle things the right way, I'll bless you for it. And so instead of deciding what to do, I had to learn how to slow down and discern what to do. And that's hard, at least for me. I like to move. I like to go. So to release control of having a conversation and when I couldn't have it.
Wasn't that amazing? Like strength in your faith and is not like I can move big things or, I can talk to 10,000 people. It's like I can control my tongue when someone betrays me.
That was harder for me, to try to figure out
for sure.
There are no resources out there in the world, really, unless, of course, there's some that are coming from at least a biblical perspective and teaching us, some of these great practices on how to approach hard situations like this. But really, there aren't that many. And what we see, what's modeled to us in the world is not the way of Christ.
Right. Yeah. This isn't stuff you learn in seminary. This isn't stuff that you learn in a book with biblical principles and an operating system on how to walk through those things in those hard times. You got to remember when you're hit with what's called, what I would say is, that dark night of the soul, it's disorienting to you. And so that's that moment where you start reaching and grabbing and grasping or saying things, doing things that you would later on regret. Mm-hmm. And so I knew in that moment, I remember watching a video of this guy. He was doing UFC and he was talking about when fighters actually get somewhat disoriented, almost knocked out, but they're kind of still alert. What they do is they come back to their base. Mm-hmm. So they'll literally put 2 feet planted down on the ground and they square up this way. It's coming back to the base. And I think that's such a huge thing that when we face hard moments and we get a blow that we didn't even anticipate coming, that we come back to our base. It's easier for me to say this on the other side, but it was hard walking through that.
Yeah.
Well,
it
that's
reminds
not
me
to
of my
say that all your...
one of my favorite philosophers, Mike Tyson. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yes. Yeah.
And that happens in a Christian walk. It's like, where did this come from? What is happening? Where am I?
Yeah. I was just going to say, it's not to say that, even though, you said you're saying this and you're on the backside of it, hindsight 2020 type of thing, right? No, I don't know. But that's not to say that you're not still dealing with the fallout, that you still don't feel the effects of some of that hard stuff, right? Even though you're not in the middle of it the way you were 6 months ago, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The fallout was probably because you can't, if the Lord's asking you to release control, I want you to relinquish control. And then I knew this because I knew myself. Maybe this isn't for every listener, but I know this is for me. And if you listen to part 1, you'd heard my past and we got into some of the addictions. I was a very angry person. And the Lord really dealt with a lot of that. But not only was the Lord asking me to relinquish control, he was also asking me in those moments, like, I want you to refuse the seduction of retaliation.
Ooh.
And I was like, let me just have one conversation. Let me just say one thing. Let me correct that person. And rather than leaning into that, I had to lean back and just love people just as Christ did, where they were mocking him on the cross and they were betraying him. And yet Jesus still chose the cross and that whole thing. So it's harder when you walk through that and you still have the fallout. You still have to deal with it.
Question.
Man.
Have you seen any glimpses of how God is using this, how he's redeemed any small aspect of it? I'm curious because, even as I think about, Christ died for us and here we are, 2,000 years later and, he hasn't returned yet. We're still in this waiting season. We're in the in-between. And in some ways you probably find yourself in the in-between. I'm curious if there have been any glimpses of ways that you see God's faithfulness or anything along those lines.
Yeah. I go back to the hardship of that season. And again, it's just, we're just on the other side of it. So it's still raw. It's still raw for me. But there were moments where Shannon and I would get up every morning. We started to kind of develop this sacred rhythm of praying and taking communion together when we were walking through that hard season. And I'll never forget, we would pray, we would cry, and we would forgive. We would pray, we would cry, we would forgive.
Yeah.
We would pray, we would cry, we would forgive. And I had a whole thing on my phone. I would pray through things and I would just, Lord, help me to forgive, help me. And I'll never forget, there was a moment where Shannon was like, hey, now I think you need to bless them. And I was like,
That's not in the script.
that's not the Lord. That's not the Lord. I don't feel that. That's not it. And I knew my heart wasn't healed until I could do that. And I'll be honest, I mean, that took several weeks.
Oh, yeah.
I know that the people like to think, forgiveness is a fact. It's not a feeling, which is true, but it's a process. And the deeper the wound, the more process it takes, and the longer it will take, because it's a continual thing. You're gonna have to continue to forgive, and the scripture talks about that. But I think for us, it was walking through, and then when I knew that I could pray a blessing over them, I knew there was hope. Shan and I, we would take communion just to make sure that our hearts were purified. And it's interesting that you say this, because I probably wouldn't put these two together. But now that you say that, Jess, or you asked that question, that I believe was the beginning. When I could do that, that was actually the beginning of us stepping into a new season for our lives. And I started to pray blessing over people. And releasing those things, releasing people, releasing the pain, releasing the hurt. And I started releasing those things. And now that I'm really kind of putting my timeline together in my heart, I think that was the beginning of some of the things, the miracles that God started to do on the other side of obedience. We started to see not just one miracle, we saw many different miracles that we started to walk through. And it was that moment where I knew God was doing something in me, and he wasn't done. It wasn't finished.
Wow. That's amazing.
Man, there's so many good things. First off, if you're in a hard spot, if you're in struggle, if you feel betrayed, just know that first off, there is a light coming. There is an end to it. And that you being obedient and trusting in God's way instead of our sinful way is the way to go. But John, I want to commend you is that like in those moments when you get punched in the face, right? They go back to their base and then it's just instincts, right? It's like, what have you prepared?
Wow, right.
Is how you're going to perform.
Yes.
And so in that moment when you're going through a panic attack it's just muscle memory. Right, I'm disoriented. I'm gonna call my accountability partner. I mean, how incredible is that when you're disoriented to be thinking that way? So, man, I'm just like, even if I'm not in a tough spot right now, I don't know if it's coming or not. But man, do I need to prepare so that when I get punched in the face, and I don't have a plan, it's just muscle memory coming back to the base and doing the right things. Like I'm gonna have communion with my wife in the morning. That is not how a lot of people, including myself, would react to a lot of these things. Yeah. So it's incredible.
It wasn't my first natural reaction. So as a kid who struggled with anger and violence, I was redhead. Man, I struggled with that. I was deeply insecure. I had so many issues going on emotionally that I just didn't know how to deal with, to process. And so when you walk through something like that, there's a moment where I'm like, you know what, Jesus, look here. Why don't you hold the collar? I'll be back. Let me step in and help you. Like, you don't want to be known for this. And instead of going backwards, man, it was just one of those moments where you lean forward. You go back to what you know. And it's saying, Lord, I'm back in my base. I trust you. And it goes back to one of the pillars. It's got to be you have to pursue the right community, because when moments like this happens, not only what your spiritual base is, but also the people, the community around you that can really walk you through it, to hold you accountable. It's the people who call you and that you can have conversation with. And Dan, you were literally one of the first people after my accountability partner that I actually shared things with. And I was like, man, I remember we had Mexican food and I was like, why am I telling this guy all of this stuff? And, man, you were really good in that moment for me. You just listened, you cared. And in the middle of the hard season and in the Mexican restaurant, you were like, well, let's pray. And I'm like, okay. So you've got to pursue those things in your life, because I can pursue the wrong relationships that are going to tell me, you know what, you should be mad. You should. And that's the way the world would respond. And you got to have the right people around you saying, you know what, God's not done.
Yeah.
God's not done with this.
Right. When it's like, you're called to be a warrior for Christ. In no way is he saying, let's pick up a sword and go get somebody. It is, I'm going to forgive someone who doesn't deserve to be forgiven according to the world's standards, right? I am going to choose to be obedient when my flesh is asking me and drawing me to do the worst things possible to these people, right?
Yeah.
It's that is a real warrior.
Well, if we can come back to what you mentioned about the turning point in your story and your journey of healing, it sounds like it was actually when you were able to bless them, the people that had turned things upside down for you and your family for so long. And
think about the strength of that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because we think of our strength, but I just imagine the spiritual battles that are happening when you choose to not only forgive somebody that betrayed you, but bless them.
And that's what Scripture says. Bless those who curse you.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. You see that played out in the movie where you're like, bless those that curse you, bless those that persecute you. And you're like, I think of the Apostle Paul when he writes in, I believe it's Philippians chapter 3. And Paul says, I want to know Christ. And we go, yeah, I want to know Christ. And we pause right there. And we're like, that's amazing. And we're like, everybody just know Christ. But Paul goes, man, I don't want to just know Christ. He says, I want to know the mighty power of the resurrection.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay, in order to know the mighty power of the resurrection, Paul, something's got to die, because you can't have a resurrection without a death.
Yeah.
You can't have a miracle without a problem. And Paul says, man, I don't want to just know Christ. I want to experience the power of the resurrection. And so I think for me, it comes back to that, like, Lord, now on the other side of it, Shane and I have talked about this, where I know that we can go through hard things. And I know that he's with me. I know that he has never left me. He's not forsaken me. It doesn't make the hardship easy, but it does make it easier. And I just walk through it now knowing, oh, he's with me. He's with me. His rod, his staff, they protect me. I know what was said. I know what was done. I know how I wanted to be Peter in that moment. I wanted to pick up the sword and slice off some ears, but I just know Jesus would look at me and be like, really, again, John, you didn't learn, but instead of having to pick up Peter's ear, it wasn't like I've got to lay down some stuff. It was, I had to lay down my life. I had to pick up my cross.
Again, it's like, Lord, I really appreciate who you are as a man, because you can say these things and like, Lord, I'll forgive people that don't deserve it. This little thing, no problem. But your situation was like the thing, no, God, don't touch that. He's like, this is what we're talking about. The thing that no one knows about, the thing that feels off limits. Like, that's what he worked through. And that is so hard to do. So I thank you for your leadership in that. The way that you're vulnerable, the way that you're sharing the story, because it is encouraging to know even pastors, right, are going through all these seasons as well, and trials and tribulations. So I just really respect who you are. As we finish part 2, it's amazing how fast time went. What do you have to encourage or equip us?
I would say maybe you've gone through betrayal. Maybe it's a wound, a difficulty. Maybe it's hard to forgive somebody. If you're listening and you have your own dark night of the soul kind of moment, my encouragement to you is this, is what if your dark night of the soul moment wasn't an interruption, but more so an invitation? God wasn't trying to interrupt your life, but God was trying to invite you into a deeper relationship with him, into a place where he teaches you, he helps you, and he grows your life and your family, and he begins to change you, not to destroy you, but to develop you. And so I would say, just like Paul in Philippians chapter 3, man, I want to know Christ. And I also want to experience the power of his resurrection. And I would just encourage you again, on the other side of your obedience, just like Jesus, there is a moment, let God resurrect you and watch the people around notice the power of God moving in your life and through your life. And that's what he did for us.
Come on.
Wow. Well, thank you, John.
That's so good.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. It was such an honor to be here. And you guys are so amazing. And I love you guys because you really were some of the people that walked us through this hard journey and the difficulties that we walked through. And I just want to say thank you so much for what you guys are doing and who you are, and allowing God to bless and use you greatly and mightily. So thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for listening to this conversation from the Everyday Faith Podcast. Our goal is to inspire everyday faith conversations. Please join us by rating and reviewing wherever you're listening, and most importantly, by sharing with a friend. For more resources like this, visit our website, askaboutmyfaith.com. God bless you as you live out your faith in your everyday rhythms of life.